Hi, I'm Steve with This Week with Cars, and today I'm going to take a look at this 1972 Datsun 240Z. The owner is complaining that as the revs come up about 3,000 RPM, the car starts to die. He thinks that maybe the fuel system's clogged up, but I think where we should start first is taking a look at the carburetors, making sure that they're set up right, and I'm going to show you how to do that. If we look under the hood here, we can see the 2.4 liter engine. This car has dual SU carburetors, and the first thing we need to do is get these air cleaners off. I'm going to take these air cleaners off so that we have good access to the carburetors. I wouldn't put these air cleaners on my cars. Really, with this type of carburetor, you're going to want to have access to it for tuning it. And with these screws that need to be held on the back side, I would want something that's a little bit easier to take apart and more secure. Okay, one of the first things I noticed, these hoses are connected to the vents to the fuel bowls. These vents, if the float were to stick, will start shooting fuel out, and really with them where they are right now, it's going to go all over the hot exhaust and create a fire. So if you're going to put hoses on your float bowl vents like this, you need to take them down to the ground so that the excess fuel will go onto the ground and not onto the hot engine. The first adjustment that I'm going to make is to the mixture screw. You can see that right here. There's a little ball bearing here. There's one on the opposite side as well. This is to keep track of where this nut is. The first thing to do is to screw this nut all the way up and then back it out 1.5 turns. The next thing to do is to start the engine so that we can see if the carburetors are working in tune. I did have to turn the choke on to get the car to start. I've now let the car warm up and turn the choke back on. This is a flow meter that measures the amount of airflow. When you put the meter up to the throat of the carburetor, it shows how much air is being moved through the carburetor. You want the air moving through both carburetors to be the same. This one is reading about 10. And this one is reading about 15, so I need to turn the rear carburetor down. To turn the rear carburetor down, we adjust this screw right here. I want to back this screw off. If I put the meter on there, I can make the adjustment while watching the meter. After you have made your adjustment, double check the flow on both carburetors again to make sure that it reads the same. It's already sounding better. I think I'm going to take care of those float bowl vents before I try to drive this car. So I'll route both vents together. That way I can tie them up at a common point. I'm going to leave the air cleaners off and take it for a test drive now. I'm going to leave them off in case I need to make more adjustments. This car does not seem to want to rev past 4,000 RPM. If I floor it, it kind of just hits a ceiling and will not go any faster. So, looks like we should look into the ignition system next. As I was pulling back into the garage, I found something interesting. Even not in gear and not moving, the engine will not rev past 4,000 RPM. When you're having problems with an engine that won't rev past a certain point, usually you're going to find that it's an ignition problem. Already I can see something that concerns me down here, but the first place I would normally look is in the distributor cap. If the ignition system is not working correctly, as RPM increases, it's harder to keep the spark going. So any dirt or corrosion is going to limit the ability of the engine to rev. An issue that I noticed right away when I looked at the ignition system, this car's been upgraded to a Pertronix ignition. It also has a Pertronix flamethrower coil. This is a 3 ohm coil, and this is the proper coil for the ignition system. Now what they've done is they've left the ballast resistor wired in, and that would be incorrect. So we need to remove the ballast resistor to give the ignition system the correct resistance. I could look at a wiring diagram to find out what these wires do, but there's no telling if someone has changed something, and it's just quicker to test it myself. So I'm going to check continuity between these wires and see how they match up with the resistor. The next thing I'm going to do is check the timing. And in case I need to make an adjustment, I've loosened this screw down here to loosen the distributor. Now the distributor will freely turn, and I'll just set that back where it was. Now it's time to check the timing. Before you check your timing, you need to disconnect the vacuum line from the distributor. Just disconnect it and then plug the end of that so that you don't have a vacuum leak in your intake manifold. I have my timing light turned on and set up. You connect your lead to the first cylinder, and now once I start the car, I'll be able to read the timing marks down there and check out the timing. Okay, the timing looks good. Let's check to make sure all the cylinders are firing. To do that, I'm going to change the pickup through each of the leads to make sure that they're good. Okay, number 2 doesn't seem to be firing at all. Number 3 is good. Number 4 is good. That one's actually 6. That's 5. Okay, number 2 is not firing, so I think what I'm going to do is take the spark plug out of this one and move it to the next one. I'm going to keep the wires the same, and that way we'll know if it's a problem in the wires or a problem in the plug. Whenever you take your spark plugs off, it's a good idea to label them so that you know where they went back. Someone has already labeled all these wires, except it looks like they've labeled them going the wrong direction. This is actually cylinder 1 up here, and then it goes back 1 through 6. Okay, time to start it back up, and we'll find out if it's a wire or if it's a spark plug. Using the timing light again, cylinder 1 looks good, cylinder 2 looks good. That's the cylinder that we had problems with before. This one right here was our problem plug. Let's take a look at it. This plug actually doesn't look that bad. You can see someone's put a lot of anti-seize onto it. Probably a good idea, especially on an engine like this. One thing that I don't like, this plug is a BPR6ES. I don't know if you can see that. This is a BPR6ES. The R indicates that this is a resistance suppression plug. I don't really like that. These plugs are meant for cars with computers, and they're made for noise suppression with radios. There's a resistor built inside of the spark plug, so I think I'm just going to pull all these out and replace them with a regular type spark plug. The really important thing you need to do before you put new spark plugs in is check the gap. Now, spark plugs come with one of these caps over them to protect them during shipping. Could be plastic, could be cardboard like these. That's to keep the gap from closing up as the box is shaking around. You always want to grab your gap checker and make sure that the gap is what you want for this engine. This one here you want about 0.031. So our 0.03 fits through, 0.034 does not. So looks like this one is good. We don't need to make an adjustment. I'll check all the rest of them and we'll get them in the engine. Another important thing to do when you're installing spark plugs is never install them with a wrench. Always hand tighten them in. That way you are sure that it's going in correctly and you won't cross thread it. Time to start the car back up and double check that we're firing on all 6 cylinders. Now the timing light is hooked up, so we can double check that and see what the engine RPM really is. Let's see how high it'll rev up to. Well, I'm pretty happy with the results from today. The car's running great now. If you want to see more videos like this, click like and make a comment below.